So creatine is something that we can produce ourselves. It's not, only like a supplement. We can also have it, take it from food, animal food. So in nature, you can find it in our bodies, mainly in the muscle. And you can also find it in animal based food. If you take it as a supplement, it's synthetic, so it is vegan and vegetarian, as it is made in the laboratory. What it does, it primarily helps the muscle hydrate and use energy more effectively. And this is why it got a bad reputation as being used as supplement for bodybuilders. And sometimes, I don't know, it was even looked like a steroid or a hormone or something like that. No, it's a nutrient. It's something that we make ourselves. So it's completely natural and it's not a steroid or anything like that. Why it's important for women, and especially in menopause, because women in menopause, as a result of the estrogen declining, they do have issues with muscle loss and bone loss. And creatine helps us with that because it helps hydrating the muscle and it helps the muscle using energy more effectively. Because of that, it also helps with fatigue and muscle aches and pains, which are some of the most common menopause symptoms. That's one effect that creatine has on the muscle and on the joints, on the muscle and on the joints as well, and the bone. And then it's the creatine effect that happens on the brain. And if you think about menopause and about menopausal symptoms, another, except the musculoskeletal pains and the muscle loss and the bone loss, it's also brain fog. So creatine, it's used some form of, how can I say that? It's improving the use of ATP. And ATP, some maybe already know, it's energy currency. So how we use our energy. Creatine makes that a lot more efficient in the muscle, but also in the brain. And that's why it's super important for women in perimenopause and menopause, because we don't use efficiently our energy during these times, and that's why we have all these symptoms. In general, creatine resides primarily in the muscle, as said. And if you think about the majority, most of us women, that we don't have such a strong muscular system like men, that this is our nature. So we have, I would say, in general, because of the way our nature is, we have an extra need for creatine, especially if we have extra bone loss and muscle loss during menopause. And as someone who uses a lot of testing and evidence-based, labs and testing in what I do, dealing with chronic conditions like autoimmune conditions is something that I do routinely. What autoimmunity is, the simple definition is the body attacking its own cells. So the body is attacking its own self for some reason. Why it's happening that? There are a lot of different reasons why, but what I want to say here, and as someone who, works with genetics, all the time, and genetics is a test that I use, in my signature programs as well. Autoimmunity always has a genetic predisposition. So there's always a genetic foundation, okay? It doesn't happen from nowhere. Saying that, having the predisposition to an autoimmune condition does not mean necessarily that you are going to get an autoimmune condition, but it just puts you at more risk. What happens is that other triggers from your environment is usually extreme, some stressful event or trauma or chronic stress, can also trigger it. Another thing is infection, usually viral infections. And then, of course, things like, toxins from our environment as well. So these are the main reasons. So if you do have the genetic predisposition and some of the other triggers happen, one of them or all of them at the same time, it's it can happen that you can get an autoimmune condition, and in this case, your body is going to attack its own self. So you have your body attacking its own self. And of course, you've got a lot of like different kind of conditions. Diabetes 1 actually is considered to be an autoimmune condition now. Of course, we know Hashimoto's is probably one of the most common one. But of course, rheumatoid arthritis is another one of the most common ones. What are the symptoms? Fatigue, pain, inflammation, these are the usual symptoms. In case of the thyroid, it can be a little bit more complicated because your metabolism is also very much affected. These conditions are also very much related and connected. So it's very common that if someone has one of these conditions, ends up with another one. So what I get usually in practice is someone that has a lot more than one autoimmune condition. So this is very, very common. It's like your body is overreacting to any stimulus that it gives, you give to it. The main strategy for all of these conditions, of course, depending on the person, it needs to be very individual, but the main strategy is to remove the triggers if you can. So, think about toxins, food, stress, manage it as better as you can. And then correct deficiencies, if there are any, and in many cases, there are a lot of deficiencies. Working with someone, of course, to identify them, and overall create a robust body, become resilient, and attacking it. I'm using the word attacking this condition because this is probably what you're trying to do by nutrition, exercise, but also removing the triggers. So this is the main approach that you need to have in all autoimmune conditions. Like I said, why this happens is the environment, as also in combination with your genetics. Raynaud, which is a condition or a syndrome that causes very cold extremities, very cold hands usually, but also could be feet, is not really an autoimmune condition itself, as someone asked me this week, but it can be a symptom of an autoimmune condition. So if you do have these symptoms of Raynaud's, which is the very, very cold hands, the first thing that you need to do is to identify what kind of Raynaud's it is. If it is related to an autoimmune condition, that you need to treat the autoimmune condition first. If it's just like a simple form of Raynaud's and it's usually circulatory, the issue, then you have to work with things like, of course, stay warm as much as you can. Avoid things like coffee and stress and alcohol as well, because these are triggers. But also you can use things like that improve circulation, like omega-3 and ginkgo biloba. Or things like citrulline and L-arginine can be very, very powerful.